Japan looks small on the map, but what if you were told it secretly controls an ocean territory the size of India, sits on some of the most violent cracks in the planet's crust, and stretches from icy seas that freeze in winter all the way down toward tropical waters near the Philippines? By the end of this video, you'll never see Japan as just a small island country again. Let's start with the biggest misconception of all. Japan is not one island, or even just four. It is an enormous stratovolcanic archipelago that runs for roughly 3,000 kilometers in a long curve along the Pacific coast of East Asia, from the cold Sea of Okhotsk in the north to seas brushing up against the tropics in the south. That is roughly the distance from London to Istanbul, all packed into a chain that many people casually call a tiny island. And that chain is crowded. Japan consists of over 14,000 islands, of which only 5, Hokkaido, Honshu, Shikoku, Kyushu, and Okinawa, get most of the attention. The rest, more than 14,000 so-called remote islands, are scattered like stepping stones across multiple seas, each helping push Japan's maritime borders far beyond what its land size suggests. Many of these islands are tiny, rocky, and uninhabited, but politically and geographically they are incredibly important. Here's the twist. On land, Japan is only about 380,000 square kilometers, putting it around the middle of the global ranking by area. But in the ocean, Japan suddenly becomes a giant, with an exclusive economic zone, its maritime backyard for fishing, energy, and seabed resources, of about 4.5 million square kilometers. That makes Japan's EEZ one of the largest on Earth, bigger than many continental powers, and more than 10 times the size of its land. Most people think of Japan as a compact, crowded land, but from a maritime perspective it behaves more like a sprawling ocean empire. Remote island groups like the Ryukyu Islands and the Nanpo Islands act as anchors, extending that zone deep into the Pacific and giving Japan strategic reach in every direction. When you look at a map that includes the full EEZ, Japan suddenly looks less like a sliver of land and more like the core of a vast blue kingdom. Why does that matter? Because in modern geopolitics, sea area is often as important as land. Those waters hold fisheries, potential gas and mineral deposits, and key shipping lanes. Japan's outsized EEZ changes the way other countries have to think about everything from naval routes to undersea cables around East Asia. It also means that disputes over very small rocks in the ocean can translate into very large arguments about who controls the resources beneath the waves. Now zoom back to the shape of the country itself. The Japanese archipelago is like a three-arc bow made of volcanic islands. The northeastern Japan Arc, the southwestern Japan Arc, and the Ryukyu Arc. These arcs are not random. They trace the edges where tectonic plates collide, giving Japan its long, curved, almost blade-like outline on the map. That outline is not just beautiful, it is a visible fingerprint of the violent forces that built the islands in the first place. Because of that shape and position, Japan straddles a startling range of latitudes, from subarctic waters near the Sea of Okhotsk to subtropical seas near the Philippine Sea. That means the same country deals with sea ice and blizzards in the north, and coral reefs, typhoons, and steamy summers in the far south, all while never crossing the equator. The climate diversity built into that north-south stretch is one reason Japan feels like multiple countries wrapped into a single flag. Beneath that picturesque map is a brutally complex geological engine. Japan sits at the convergence of several tectonic plates, including the Pacific Plate and the Philippine Sea Plate diving under the edges of continental side plates. Those subduction zones fuel intense crustal instability, which is why Japan experiences frequent earthquakes and belongs at the very heart of the Pacific Ring of Fire. If the Ring of Fire is a necklace of volcanoes circling the Pacific, Japan is one of its brightest, most dangerous jewels. The Ring of Fire contains the majority of Earth's active and dormant volcanoes, and Japan alone hosts a surprisingly large share of them. Depending on the criteria used, Japan has over 100 active volcanoes, more than almost any other country, making it one of the planet's most volcanic regions. These volcanoes are not just scenic mountains. They are living systems capable of reshaping landscapes, disrupting air travel, and reminding everyone that the ground beneath their feet is not as solid as it looks. That volcanic energy is not just theoretical. Major eruptions have literally redrawn the map. In the early 20th century, lava flows from Sakurajima were so massive they connected what had been an island to the Osumi Peninsula, turning it into a peninsula instead. In the same century, entirely new volcanic landforms emerged, like Showa Shinzan in Hokkaido, and undersea features near the Bayonnaise Rocks, showing that Japan's coastline can grow or change within a human lifetime. So Japan is not a fixed shape at all, it's a work in progress. The archipelago is slowly growing, warping and shifting as earthquakes, eruptions, and even land reclamation projects alter its outlines. Satellite images and detailed surveys show coastal zones being expanded by human engineering, while other parts of the coast subside or are uplifted by tectonic activity. That means maps of Japan are snapshots of a moving target, not permanent drawings of a stable landmass. The drama doesn't stop at the coastline. Off Japan's eastern flank, the seafloor plunges into some of the deepest ocean trenches on Earth. The Kuril-Kamchatka Trench, the Japan Trench, and the Izu-Ogasawara Trench all reach depths of roughly 10,000 meters, deep enough to hide Mount Everest beneath the surface and still have water above the peak. These trenches are so deep and remote that exploring them involves specialized submersibles and extreme engineering. These trenches sit right where the subducting plates dive under Japan, so they are both geological scars and engines. They concentrate earthquake and tsunami risk, but also mark the boundaries of some of the planet's most extreme pressure zones, shaping currents, marine life, and scientific research targets. For scientists who study how the Earth works, these trenches around Japan are like laboratories carved into the ocean floor. Above sea level, almost 4/5 of Japan is covered in mountains, which is why flat land is so precious, and major cities squeeze into narrow plains and coastal basins. The Japanese Alps run down the spine of Honshu, forming a rugged backbone that splits climates, divides watersheds, and creates dramatic scenery in every direction. When people imagine Japan's big cities pressed between mountains and sea, they are seeing a direct consequence of just how little low, flat ground exists. Towering over much of this is Mount Fuji, a near-perfect cone-shaped volcano that is both the country's highest peak and one of its most iconic symbols. It is not just a postcard image or a spiritual landmark. It's part of the same volcanic arc system that makes Japan so seismically active. The symmetry people admire is the visible result of repeated eruptions piling up layers of lava and ash in a remarkably even way, turning danger into beauty. That mountainous spine has another surprising effect. It carves out microclimates. Coastal plains on one side can be drenched in snow, while regions on the other side can be relatively dry and milder, all within a relatively short distance. In winter, moist air from the sea is forced up over the mountains, dumping heavy snow on one side and leaving the other in a clearer rain shadow. Rivers have to cut steep, fast channels down from those central ranges to reach the sea, giving Japan short, energetic river systems instead of long, lazy continental ones. Japan's separation from mainland Asia by the Sea of Japan is more than a line on the map. It has acted as a buffer, shaping everything from climate to historical contact. That sea helped protect Japan from some invasions in the past, altered trade routes, and influenced how plant and animal species spread between the continent and the islands. At the same time, it acted as a kind of filter, allowing some influences to cross while slowing others simply because of distance and water. Meanwhile, on the Pacific side, Japan faces directly into the open ocean, with its complex currents and powerful storms. Warm currents like the Kuroshio and cold currents from the north interact around the archipelago, contributing to rich fisheries but also feeding typhoons and turbulent weather systems that slam into the coasts each year. This collision of currents is one reason Japanese coastal waters are biologically rich, but also meteorologically intense. This combination of plate boundaries, steep mountains, and offshore trenches makes Japan one of the world's hotspots for seismic activity. Thousands of earthquakes are recorded in and around the country every year, with magnitudes of 4 to 6 considered almost routine, compared to how rare they are in more stable continental interiors. That constant shaking is a price the country pays for the dramatic landscapes, hot springs, and geothermal energy that come with life on a subduction zone. The ocean territory tells another strange story. Japan's EEZ is carved into distinct maritime zones. Around the Ryukyu Islands, the Nanpo Islands, Pacific areas off the main islands, the Sea of Japan, and remote features like Minami-Torishima. Tiny specks of land such as Minami-Torishima, sitting far from the main islands, dramatically expand Japan's rights over surrounding waters and seabed. Protecting and monitoring these far-flung locations is a continuous effort, because of the resources and strategic value involved. Because of these far-flung islands, Japan's maritime footprint reaches into multiple seas: the Sea of Japan, the East China Sea, the Philippine Sea, and large swaths of the North Pacific that feel closer to the open ocean than to any coast. That gives Japan overlapping interests with numerous neighbors and makes its geography central to debates over shipping routes, fishing rights, and undersea resource exploration. When you hear about maritime disputes in East Asia, many of them are really arguments about where Japan's extraordinary ocean geography begins and ends. Another mindbender. Despite being perceived as one dense urban strip, much of Japan's terrain is difficult to build on. This has led to massive use of land reclamation along bays and harbors, literally creating new coastal land by filling in shallow areas. Entire airport islands, industrial zones, and waterfront districts stand on ground that did not exist a few decades ago, yet now looks as permanent as any natural coastline. It is another way Japan's shape is slowly engineered as well as erupted and uplifted. Japan's north-south reach even influences biodiversity. Subarctic conditions in the north give way to temperate forests in the middle, and then to subtropical environments in the far south, all within a single nation. That latitudinal sweep means species that love cold, snowy winters and species that thrive in warm, humid climates both find a home within the Japanese archipelago. For wildlife, Japan functions like a natural bridge connecting very different climatic worlds. Look again at the small island cliché and it becomes almost absurd. In terms of land, Japan is modest compared to giants like Russia or Canada, but in terms of ocean reach, it ranks among the top countries on Earth. In terms of stability, it looks calm and orderly on the surface, yet geologically, it sits on one of the most unstable and explosive crossroads in the world. That contrast, visual order over physical chaos, is one of the reasons Japan feels so uniquely dramatic. All of these facts add up to a country defined by extremes and contrasts. It is a narrow crescent of land that stretches as far as some continents, an ocean power disguised as a small island, and a technologically advanced society living on top of one of the planet's most restless pieces of crust. Japan's geography is not just background. It is an engine that has shaped its risks, its resources, its history, and even how the rest of the world must navigate the seas around it. Once you see Japan this way, as a vast volcanic ocean-straddling system rather than just a strip of land on a classroom map, it becomes very hard to go back to calling it small ever again. So when you hear someone call Japan a small island nation now, it almost sounds like a joke. This is a country that rides multiple tectonic plates, owns a maritime backyard bigger than most continents, stretches across climates from snow country to subtropical reef zones, and literally keeps rewriting its own coastline with volcanoes, earthquakes, and human engineering. Japan isn't small. It's compressed intensity, a whole catalog of extreme geography squeezed into a narrow arc on the map. And that's what makes it so addictive to study. Every time you zoom in, on a trench, on a volcanic arc, on a tiny remote island, the story gets stranger and more impressive. If this deep dive changed how you see Japan, don't keep it to yourself. Hit like if this opened your eyes, share the video with that one friend who still thinks Japan is just Tokyo and anime, and drop a comment with the fact that blew your mind the most. Make sure you subscribe for more crazy geography breakdowns from around the world. Because if one small country can be this extreme, imagine what else is hiding on the map.